Okay, and I see that Mara said she could barely hear me. Is this better now, Mara? Mara said she could barely hear me. Great. All right. Well, this is important as we're setting up and getting ready to begin the presentation. I want to be sure that I'm heard, and I'd also like to be able to respond to you with you in the chat box. So thank you for letting me know how things are working. I am still interested in how many people have begun the mural challenge or are participating in this for the first time uh, during 2014-2015. Would be nice to know who's, okay, Carl is new. Great. Well, we'll make sure that there are plenty of people to help you through. Okay, is it pronounced Crescenta? It's new? Lottie says I'll help. Okay, so Lottie's not new. Okay, great. So I see two that are new. Any more? Just a couple of minutes here. And right now, looks like we have 14 people who are logged on to begin. Going to wait until it says exactly 5 just to make sure that we kick this off at the right time and all who are still trying to get in are here. Okay. All right. So I would assume that everybody else has done the murals before. Is that correct? We're in 1 minute and counting. All right. So Carl says it's a little bit muffled. I'll try to make sure that I'm speaking a little. Is that better, Carl? We're about to go live. Let me know, Carl. Is it still muffled? Okay. All right. We're all right. Again, it comes in as Roy Carter as the moderator, but this is Sarah Trotty. Is the sound better? Oh, 5 o'clock. We are ready to begin. Well, certainly let me just underscore and repeat that this is C-STEM, the Mural Challenge, and we are beginning this year with the new theme, energy infrastructure, wind, oil, and natural gas. Okay, it's still not quite as clear as it can be, and as soon as I get some help in here, I'll work on that. It's still not clear, so I'll speak maybe a little slower and a little louder. Okay. All right, this just gives you a little bit of background about myself, so I'm not going to spend a long time on that because all this is on the C-STEM page. I am Sarah Trotty. I've been with the Mural Presentation Program probably since the beginning, or most of it. Again, now, for those of you who don't know, I've just recently retired from Texas Southern University and have worked in that art area there for over 31 years. The main thing that I want you all to know is that there are lots of murals on that campus. And those of you who are in the Houston area, or you can go online and get some information about the murals. Let's talk about those expected outcomes first. Teachers and students will engage with professionals that connect STEM industries with classroom learning. This is important. We want you to take a look at the industries in your area and use those as resources, learn about those. Also learn about those that you can do research with. So we want to understand the industries that are using science, technology, engineering, and math. Also very important in terms of an outcome of this year's program is that we can demonstrate that students are learning about innovative and relevant content, the tools and the resources that will inspire the leadership, creativity, entrepreneurship, critical and solution-driven thinking, and advances STEM knowledge and skills. And this would allow them to come up with creative solutions to the problems that they're to solve this year and anytime they're working with a project. So let's talk about the mural framework, and what we're going to do is look at the mural framework and then also look at the topic and begin to see how the research can be applied in a creative way and represented through the mural. Now, every level from elementary, middle, and high school will deal with this theme when they're producing the murals. Again, the theme, not to be overly redundant, is energy infrastructure, that which is so important to making these possible, the basic institutions, the plants that help these things operate. So we're looking at the energy infrastructure for wind, oil, and natural gas. So with this, the students are going to be engaged in research. They're going to look for images as well that'll help them convey their messages of what they've learned and what they want to show in terms of their understanding of the energy infrastructure. So these will not only be visual, they'll be written, oral, and technology presentations. Now, there's so many resources out there that are available, such as using online searches, interviews with professionals, taking field trips to some of these places in your regional areas. You want to enrich the student's experience. So whatever you can do in addition to what we provide is very important. Now, just a little bit about murals, and I know most of you have at least an opinion about what a mural is. Some people will mostly think of murals as large wall paintings, and they can be paintings, but early murals or early drawings or paintings were on walls of caves, and just to mention a few of those well-known caves, such as those found in Lascaux, France, Altamira, Spain, or most of those in the south central part of Africa. These were first in caves and later became parts of architectural structures, such as buildings in Europe and other parts of the world, and we call those frescoes. Modern murals now are not necessarily just on the walls. They can be painted on canvases and then glued to walls. They can be painted on canvas and put on stretchers and hung on the walls. And sometimes they're just painted on materials, large pieces of paper, and just hung. The materials used to produce murals also vary today from those earlier materials, which were basically either drawing sticks from charcoal or the wood that was burnt, or from early pigment that was used, and then later paints such as tempera paints and egg paints. Now, today we use water-based paints on the wall surfaces, but earlier these were put into wet plaster or directly on the walls. Today we use oil paints and acrylics or pastels. Now, we will go to a site here. I put several resources for you just to sort of help you to be able to just to take a look at these. I want to look at a few of them. Wikipedia sometimes has some really good resources, and I think that they do a great job on the mural. It'll give you some of the information about what a mural is. You can look into history, the political reasons for doing murals, use for design, and there are just lots of examples. If you go down looking at the history, looking at the techniques, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but you can go back to all the periods and all the different cultural groups who have used murals in many, many ways. And so I recommend this as one source. Let me go back. And there were murals really proliferated in this country, in the United States, during the early period of times when the Works Progress Association, WPA, sponsored murals in government and city buildings and others to help people who were going through the early recession. So we'll take a look at that one. Let me get it loaded here for you. All right. Now you get an opportunity here just to look at some of those murals that were done early on in various places. And I think this is great because you can see how the murals would fit the architecture of the building. So if there was a doorway, it might go around the doorway, or a window frame, sometimes directly on a large wall. You can see how the imagery was could be made to fit the space, and how different each of these might be regarding the stories that they're trying to tell. So there's just many examples. There's so many here, we certainly won't go through all of them, but just to give you a chance to see how murals during the WPA were also important. I'm going to move on here. Now, Dr. John Biggers was an inspiration for the first C-STEM mural project, and he continues to be so. What we're going to look at this year is his exploration of geometry, the geometric pattern in art. The mural that's used as inspiration is called Spring Renewal. And this particular one, as you can see, and we'll move around and take a look, he's used lots of symbolic or simple shapes, such as these shotgun houses that you see in perspective here on the left. You can see the simple turtle shape, which is an important symbol that Biggers uses quite often. And you can see how he's overlapped colors and patterns and textures to help to create his theme. This one of renewal. Spring is here, and it's coming, and it's the beauty of nature and all the different patterns that develop. So his works are full of symbolism and inspiration, and likewise yours should look to find some symbolic ways. Now, Dr. Biggers started working with sacred geometry not right away in his work, but his work changed in his last 15 years of when he was working at Texas Southern University. And he was working with a mathematician to learn about the universe and how things are broken up. And you see here some examples of the universal use of shapes in sacred geometry. So I'm going to carry you to this next site. The next one, that one. Should be right there. Here we are. Setting it up for you. This one's a little movie. And you can begin to see, just give me a second here. All right, can you all see this particular one? The screen is dark right now, but it should be starting. You see it loading? Yes, very good. In this one, you can use simple tools like protractor, rulers, and you can see how you can study the math and geometry of breaking these shapes up and working from a central point to create balanced patterns on a central axis. And your students would love doing these patterns. In fact, lots of them do them all the time now. And it's a good way to talk about mathematics and design and art and how mathematics can be found in nature and create all these beautiful shapes. And the more intricate, the better. We'll move on. I put this slide is in here now just to give you examples and encourage students to take a look around them, because we want them to be aware of their environment, aware of nature, aware of man-made objects, and see when they can find geometric patterns that are either made and included in the design of the things that we use every day, the functional things, like this basket, or look at them in science patterns, or in historical architecture, or even the natural peacock and its beautiful patterns. So you'll see patterns even in interior design. You'll see them everywhere. And we want to encourage them to maybe even collect some of these and use them as inspiration in their works. Now, also, when we are talking about murals, we have to understand how color plays a role in that. Right now, we're just giving you a little overview of everything, but you do want to, when you get your materials, you're going to think about your color scheme or your palette, the colors that are being used. Now, Dr. Biggers used what was called a low-key palette, which meant he used sort of darker tones. But the slide here just shows you the basic color wheel, the primary and secondary colors, and the complementary colors, which are always very good to use in any work, and help the students to understand how they can use these to create interest and excitement in their work. So understanding color becomes very, very important. But along with understanding color is understanding how to change that color, how to tone it down, as Dr. Biggers did often, by adding a little black or brown or the complementary color. You can get great brownish reds or toned down reds or toned down greens by adding a little bit of the opposite color. So adding a little green to the red or red to the green will tone down the other color. Likewise, the same as with the secondary color, the primary purple and the primary yellow. They will complement or tone each other down. That's what we call creating a tone of a color. Or you create a shade of the color by adding a little black to it. That's the same thing. They're very close. One has a little more rich warmth to it, so when you tone it down, it's browner. But you can add a little black to it and create a darker hue. Then, of course, there's the tinted colors. Most of you are aware of this, where you can, and you just want the students to understand this. By adding white to the color, we can lighten that color. So students can use pure colors, but you don't want to always use just pure colors. You want to tint the colors sometimes, tone the colors down, and use them in combination to create exciting imagery. I'm going to skip over this because my time's running out a little bit. So we're not going to hot link this one, but I left this link here for you also to take a look and to use to talk before we questions. Okay. All right, maybe I will go on, Dennis. I'm told I have a little more time, so I want to go on and just show you how to go to this site that I prepared for you here. Let me get rid of this one first. All right. And we're going to copy this and place it. All right, so if you really want a reference to help them with the color wheel, you know, the internet has so much available for us now. This Google search here can help you find the color wheel, how to do tints, how to do tones. It'll show you the grayscale and just anything that you need as a resource to help students to understand. And as you look at colors, you look at these neutral colors here. Dr. Biggers used lots of these earth tones as well that he toned down. But there are any combination of colors and any way of looking at all of these that this is a good example that shows the use of the color purple and its related colors, the reds, and how some of those can be toned down to create an interesting geometric pattern. And this color wheel actually does the same thing. Now you see the color wheel as a value scale or toned it down scale. So there are many, many ways you can use color rather than just using it purely directly out of the color tube or the jar of paint. And students tend to want to use just that color. So you want to encourage them to change the value of these colors and create a much more interesting composition. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is to use all of the media sources that you can. Every city has a public radio station. They cover topics like energy, and because we are dealing with energy, they are really great resources to use. If you're in the Houston area, you go to the public radio, you can get Dave Failing, but there are also people in just about any locality that will cover energy and those natural resources, and they will cover both the pro and con of those resources. So very current today, you can't miss it. Everybody's talking about wind as a resource, oil, and natural gas, and there's so many topics right now with gas. And you'll find out, if you haven't been listening to the news, but certainly encourage your students to do so if they haven't been listening, not you, I'm sure you are, but so much is in the news now about the use of natural gas. And many positive things. It certainly has helped us in terms economically to be sustainable, but we certainly want to continue to get students to look at this research and use it to come up with their composition. Now, let's talk some more about this topic, energy infrastructure, oil, and gas. The renewable resources that we've talked about are vital to our continued growth as a country, and this is, we want students to be engaged in this, to understand it, to be passionate about it, to really use it in their conversations so that they then will be very adept in applying this to their mural or other topics in the C-STEM. We're looking at infrastructure again, and so I'm giving you here a little definition. It's the basic physical and organizational structures or the facilities needed to harness and move energy resources for the operation of a society or an enterprise. And so these things are very important, and we have them around us every day. And sometimes we ignore the fact, how do we get the energy to turn our lights on or to bring water to our homes? Get them to see how it really affects them every day and how important it is for them to understand these resources, to take care of these resources, but also to help make these resources much more plentiful in ways that don't hurt our environment. So we take a look at some ways that we move these resources. Natural gas pipeline networks are all over right now, and there are ways of bringing this resource of natural gas to the customer. to the utilities. So we will select this again. I can't hold on. See if I can get this going. I'm going to go back to the next slide. Let me get back to the correct slide here. All right, we'll select it, copy it, and give it a chance to load. It's coming. Look at the days, and research wasn't quite as quick. Give me just a moment here. Can you see? Can you see the oil and natural gas? Let's see if I get any responses here. Okay, and Mara asked about the sacred geometry earlier, but can you see the slide with the oil and natural gas? It's not showing on mine. If we page through this particular one, you will not only get a little history about how this works and see how it's working today, but you'll also have an example of some of the plants. There's so much here that this executive summary just begins to give you comparisons of how things have changed, where they are in different parts of the country, what we can do to make things better. So this oil and natural gas is certainly, and the infrastructure is important, and you begin to see how that works. So we want to encourage you to take your students to this source, but you're not limited to this one. This is just one to get you started. Then when we think about wind as a resource for energy infrastructure for wind. Now, wind is caused by uneven heating of the atmosphere by the sun and the irregularities of the Earth's surface and the rotation of the Earth. So all these things together, we produce this movement of wind. Wind power is affordable, it's efficient, and it's an abundant source of electricity. It's also one of those historically used processes that we forgot about for a while, but we're moving back to today. And yes, and Maya was saying there's so many ways that this topic can go in so many directions, and that is so true. And we'll talk about some of those in just a moment. So there are pros and cons about this, the wind use too, and how it works. And so what we want your students to do and you to do along with them is research how many ways you can take a look at these topics and how it will help them come up with a story to tell for that. So again, Wikipedia is a source, so we're going to log onto this one just a little bit. Let's see how many we'll get this one up to go to the wind power resources. And wind has been used for thousands of years. They said even back to when sails were used to navigate the Nile River. Most of us know of wind power, early windmills used in this country, but the windmill has changed quite a bit from what we know and how it was in the past. Now, if you go to Wikipedia, you'll see there are many, many ways you can hot link or link into some of the topics. You could just really spend a lot of time learning about all these ways of generating energy through wind, and how these wonderful big blades that generate the wind are even made or even moved. So it shows you a little bit of the history. It talks about wind farms, offshore wind power. There are examples. There's a gallery of the different ways wind is produced, so you can look at and go off to one of those. And let me go back. Flip. So, need to get back to where I am. So there are many, many ways that you can learn about the wind. Look at the turbines that are used now for the wind resources. I'm going to just move on from this particular one. Well, let's try it. We've got time. Ah, so you can see the many examples, and I think your students will be excited. And, you know, some of them may have traveled to places where there are wind farms and or have family. They could send pictures and images of wind farms. And so this would be an exciting kind of thing for them to understand. And I think when you do this as well, not only from the energy perspective, but how the two wind and the farms can coexist without one harming the other, but being useful to the other. So these are things that you can get your students engaged in talking about. Is more than just looking at the topic, but then understanding how it works. As we move to the next slide, and we are coming to the end of the presentation fairly soon here. Right now we are talking about how to get started, where to begin to research. We're not yet into the process of making the mural. Our next cycle, this cycle that we're beginning, is just to introduce this challenge and to help us understand the problem we are to solve and to begin the brainstorming strategy. So this is what's highlighted at this point now. Cycle 1 is what we will be working with at first and during this beginning session of that. And you want to encourage the research. That's the important thing about science, is there's so much out there. There's so many things that you can discover, and it'll make you question and think and want to find answers. And this is what you want to encourage your students to do. You want them to become excited about digging for answers. And that's the part of the cycle that we're in now, getting them to dig for those answers, to find things and answer the questions. And as we move on, so we are, coming toward that. How do we communicate what we're learning and what we're trying to do? So this information certainly will all be shared on C-STEM Break. Then there'll be Saturday workshops to help us go through and to be able to discuss and ask questions. And students then will communicate with teachers, and they'll take place using the C-STEM platform. We want to encourage everyone, teachers and students and trainers, to blog and to share the research, to upload pictures and be collaborative in what you're trying to do, to chat live with the trainers and ask questions. And then, we want these students to compete, for the top awards, because your school can be the best school. All the schools are good. We want everybody to really be top. And when you're trying to be the best, everybody's going to be good. So we want to encourage that. Excited about it. So what are the next steps? To complete your training, you will join the group on C-STEM Break, and you'll answer the questions. This one says the filmmaking thread, but actually it means the mural thread. And then you will continue to work. One of the things we want you to do is encourage as many people in your school to participate in the C-STEM challenge, to be a part of the kickoff this coming Saturday at 10 a.m. to make it a fun event, have lots of things going on, begin to have an idea of what we're doing, and to get people geared up and excited to begin the process. So try to get your students there and fellow teachers and other colleagues for the kickoff, which again is on October the 25th, which is this coming Saturday at 10 a.m. And following that, the next training session will take place on November 15th. And if you want to contact me directly, my email is sgtrotty@yahoo.com. But mainly, a lot of our discussions will be on CSTEM. And Mara has asked, would you give us a bit of an idea of what the students do in murals during, well, what they did during the murals in the May competition? Well, last year, the competition, we used various media. We're not going to divulge what we're going to do this time, but they did the research to come up with their topics, and there had to be a period where there was research, and then there was the planning period where we developed all of these things. And then the students had a chance to use their materials to do the designs. They made the murals out of the materials that were provided for them, and they had an opportunity to paint those murals. And so it's really not difficult. The making process, we'll talk about that at a later time. We keep it real simple so that it's an easy way to make a canvas-like material, to make it portable, easy to hang, and to use the media that we have for each level. And each level will have a different media. Some will use a combination of materials. Does that answer your question? And I can go on now and begin to type some of those questions in. So you can go on and, okay, well, I'm glad that did help, Myra. Again, the basic thing think of a mural as just a large painting. We're painting on kind of homemade canvases, but you'll come up with your theme. The most important thing is not the idea of the mural itself, it's what you put in terms of content on the mural, dealing with the infrastructure. So researching the infrastructures of the topical wind, oil, or gas structures, understanding its importance, how it works, what we can do to make it better, even looking at the negative things that can happen if we don't do a good job. All these things are extremely important. And the students will make sketches, and then they'll come together and they'll find the sketches that help to tell the story that they want to tell better. Each school, each group will come up with a way of interpreting the theme that we have, and that's what we want you to do. It's how well you interpret that theme visually with the materials that are available, using the processes we talk about, using the techniques of the materials. That's what's important. We have any other questions now that we've completed at least the visual part of the mural? And I'm hoping now that people can still follow and hear the questions. And if there's someone who is fairly new, it looks like someone just joined the session not too long ago. Okay. All right, I see that we have a number of people here. Okay. Okay. If we have a mixed level of students in your group, I will check to verify that. I do know that there are threads, and we have an elementary thread, a middle school thread. Well, I'm sorry, in the thread, let me correct myself. There's an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school from the same basic area that will work together in a way in terms of working with the theme. But the elementary students will make a mural, the middle school students will make a mural, and the high school students will make a mural. Now, if you're in a smaller town where the junior high school and the middle school students are in the same school, you'll probably still receive materials for each because you compete at those levels and you compete separately, and the same school has an equal opportunity to win the challenge at the elementary level, at the middle school level, or the high school level. If you're a small school, you may not have as many students working on the topic, But when you divide up the chores, the jobs that you'll do, maybe there'll be just 2 students at the middle school doing the research. Maybe there'll be another 2 students who like to write, and they'll come up with the written part of the dialogue and what we're saying, as well as interpreting this and speaking. Then maybe there's some students who like doing the artwork, who will actually come up with the drawings that could be used for the composition. Then maybe there are students who just like making things, and they'll make the to make the canvas, put it together. So it becomes a team effort at each level, and we don't compare schools based on whether you're a small school or a large school. We only look at the work itself, the product that's produced. And I can tell you that, some of our winners last year were from very small schools, and some of them were from larger schools. But it didn't hamper their opportunity to compete with one another. So I hope that, so Mara, since we have a middle and high school, but yes, you can submit each of them separately. You can divide them up and submit them separately. That's a very good question also, Mara. Thank you. Right. I'm glad that was useful and it helped you, because we do want you to encourage. The one thing we want to say, and even if you have a larger school, your goal is to get as many people at your school to participate. And it's not just art students, because it's a mural. You want to get those students in the science classes. You want to get those students in the math classes. You want to get those students in the technology classes. You want to get them all engaged in this project so that they kind of feed off of one another and help one another. And so those students who are good with the math can come up with those geometric shapes that will become part of the mural design. The students who like to draw imagery will do the drawings and maybe the paintings. The students who like to do research can come up with the investigation of the topic and make recommendations so that the students, and when they talk to one another, they'll come up with a way to make the imagery work. So we want total engagement. It's a partnership. And if you happen to be the art teacher who is on this session right now, go back and talk to your science teachers, or go back and talk to your math teachers. Get them and their students involved. Talk to your technology teachers. Get them involved. Talk to your history teachers and your English teachers, because they can help write some of this. And help plan and do the research and help to provide the material that's useful. So everyone can be engaged and involved. And the more people you have involved in this, the more exciting this can become. Not every student's going to want to participate, but there ought to be enough students at the school to pull together a diversified team to come up with a great product. Are there any other questions? I'm going to enter the chat a little bit too, just to make sure. All right, Mara, I also hope that everyone is getting excited. And I am glad you're excited, because those of you who are at least part of the challenge, at least today, will go back and bring others with you for Saturday. And then if you can help get that enthusiasm, it'll work. Lottie says, will the project be like a story with research? Yes, of course. A mural actually is a story. It's a narrative. It normally tells and communicates an idea, and that's what we want you to do. It's not just oil that's shown on the mural, or gas structures or infrastructures or wind infrastructures. We want to know something about how this works. Maybe you introduce a little bit of history with what the future could be. Maybe you have young people engaged in making changes and how things work. So yes, it should tell a story. And if you latch onto something interesting in your region or area that's in the news, include it in your mural. That's unique. That's important. And we all learn from that. That's an excellent question. I thank you for that. Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to back this up to the first slide and go back to, just in case some people came in and didn't see. Oops, did I go too far? Okay. I think I went too far. All right. So I don't know how many people saw all of the slides. I won't go through everything, but I just want to just do a quick summary review again. This mural activity has some outcomes, expected outcomes. We want to engage as many teachers and students with professionals as possible so that they really, you know what is good about this? We inspire careers in STEM careers. And so this is exciting. We want to be connected with the industries near and in your communities. Then we want to look at innovative ways to look at this content, to inspire student leadership. You know, this is where you find out those students who are go-getters, those who are going to do the research, those who are going to make sure we stay on time. You're going to find out the creative people. So give them a chance to really, and the sooner you start, the better. Form some teams, and we'll talk about forming those teams, but you're going to need teams of students who are going to work in tandem to make this work together. And we're going to need teams of teachers. We want the teachers to be excited. Again, I do want you to understand there'll be 3 levels of murals: elementary, middle, and high school. These schools will be in a thread. They're kind of like part of, we want them to meet together and talk sometimes and have some ideas and share, but then each one will create a mural. So that's important for you to do. Again, I can't reiterate how important at this early stage the research is. Research can be exciting, and we want our students to know that it's exciting. Get them engaged. If there's any plant nearby, make a field trip. Plan to go and see how the water recycling works to produce energy in your city. Ask someone to come to the school to talk to your students about how this infrastructure, maybe there's someone who writes about it in your community, or maybe there are people who work. Students have parents and relatives who work in some of these industries. Ask them to come and talk to your class, or to talk with the student and provide them information to come and share if we can't bring somebody in. So use all the resources that are available to you. Try to get as many professionals engaged. You know what? When they become engaged and they're going to support your school, that's a good thing. So we want to get them engaged and to let them know what you're doing and how excited you are with learning about energy infrastructure. We talked about the mural background and history. This is where those students who like history come into play. They can do some of that research for you. Or those who like to write or read, they can begin to summarize the information that you're going to use a little bit later on. Again, do some research on Dr. John Biggers and his murals and how he uses geometry and pattern in his work. And then, of course, we want you certainly to take a look, do some research on sacred geometry and how these beautiful pieces have other qualities as well and how they've been used throughout history. Look at all the resources of patterns and geometry within nature and man-made objects. Study the color wheel and think about how your colors will help you communicate your subject the best once you've created your compositions. Again, use the public resources that are available to you. Study the infrastructure of oil, gas, and wind. look for and gather as many pictures as you can, whether you find them on the internet or in books or magazines, or take those pictures in your environment, places in your city, wherever you may live, and use those as inspiration for your composition. And again, remember that there are going to be different cycles. We're going to first deal with this introduction as we're doing now. Then we'll begin to talk more about the research and conducting that research. We'll get involved with the questions and how to begin to collect and use these resources, how to transfer those into a design or composition that'll say what you want to say as we're doing the planning phases of that. Eventually, how to make sample prototypes or models of what you want to do, and finally to put them in the final product, the mural itself, that will begin to create and get finished before the competition. Again, I can't say enough how important it is to begin talking this up in your school, because if it's just one teacher in a classroom, it's not going to work. It needs to be all the teachers talking to one another based on their expertise, and their students getting excited about sharing their roles and helping one another, communicating, and coming up with something that's a result of a team effort. So we're going to continue to emphasize this importance of the team effort. Again, kickoff is this coming Saturday at 10 a.m. We want to be sure that you're there. So let's not think that this is it. This is just the start. We're just at the beginning, and we're so excited to have you with us working on this project. I'm here to answer any other questions that you might have. I hope that if you were late coming into the project, I had a chance to at least update you a little bit. So are there any other questions? We have a few minutes left. Okay, I am so glad that you are excited about the kickoff, because it's that enthusiasm that's going to transfer to all the others. And I thank you also for being a participant in this first part of preparing you for this year's theme, energy infrastructure, wind, oil, and natural gas. So I think it sounds like we have a great group here. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, and I appreciate that. I just can't wait to see what you all are going to do, because you already sound enthusiastic, and it's going to be such a great thing, because if you're like me, you learn something every day. I just love digging, because once you get into the research, there's things that you've never thought about. And this is such an important topic today. It's important for not only today, it's important for the future. So the students are going to be researching those things that are really going to be their future. We're talking about it now, but this will be there today. And they'll become those leaders that can make the change and make things good with the infrastructure, the resources that we have to make them much more available to everybody in a way that's extremely useful. So I thank you. Is there one other session after this one? This is it. So everybody's been very good in terms of listening and some of the responses. If you all are satisfied that we've covered everything. Yeah, there are other sessions tomorrow, but there are no more sessions today. So we probably could sign off if you all are ready. Okay. All right. So we're going to sign out off unless there are other questions. All right. So everybody's saying thank you. Yes, it's good. So I think we're just going to sign off and get ready because you have some more sessions tomorrow, and then we're looking forward to that big kickoff on Saturday. Thank you so much. Look forward to continued working with you. Thank you.